Do me a favor. Could you say senator instead of ma'am?
I love these members that get up and say, read the bill.
What difference at this point does it make?
The whole island will become so overly populated that it will tip over and capsize.
But we have to pass the bill so that you can find out what is in it.
We know that the free market is nonsense.
This liberal will be all about socializing, will be about basically taking over and the government running all of your companies.
The time has come for unfiltered, politically incorrect common sense. Welcome to the wild world of Cowboy Logic.
And welcome to the wild woolly world of Cowboy Logic. Man, is this just a firestorm this week. You can't make this stuff up. I'm reading the headlines of Drudge, and all it is Trayvon Martin, Trayvon Martin, Trayvon Martin. People getting beat up that might be pro or con the verdict. In fact, one of the founding members of the Chambers brothers, Lester Chambers, dedicated a song to Trayvon, and he was attacked. He had to go to the hospital. Now he's forced to walk with a cane.
The guy's like, what,
73
80 years old?
White jogger beaten. Baltimore witness says a group of blacks beat an Hispanic man yelling, "This is for Trayvon." A fired employee to file whistleblower lawsuit against prosecutors. Robert Zimmerman to the DOJ, stop the witch hunt. He said George is anything but a racist. It seemed that way. I mean, a lot of stuff came out about George Zimmerman being anything but a racist.
Yeah, there was nothing.
He did a lot of stuff to try to
that.
help youths of all backgrounds. He just, unfortunately, was a wannabe cop. And Walmart stormed in L.A., one arrested. A burning building in Chester County, Pennsylvania, ruled arson and kill Zimmerman graffitied along the wall. You blankety blank, you started this. I mean, this is unbelievable.
Hey, at least in prison he'd be safe.
May I just say one thing? Chaos, create a diversion, forget about what's really going on.
Yep.
This is exactly what the Cloward Piven strategy talked about.
Yep.
Does anybody care that Snowden is still at large in Russia somewhere?
Or that Egypt is erupting.
Egypt is erupting. And in my humble opinion, what we're going to be talking about for the bulk of this show is a book about Extortion 17 and how 30 of our finest were killed in a chopper crash that Joe Biden released the names of these people from. To me, that's more treasonous, I'm sorry, than anything Edward Snowden ever did.
Yeah,
okay?
I agree.
All right? You're not supposed to be doing that stuff. You're talking to movie producers about doing a movie about this. Meanwhile, you're exposing the families of these fallen heroes and these heroes before this Extortion 17 occurred.
Well, and of the OBL, incident.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, there's nothing there's nothing top secret about this administration except what they're doing against our military and what they're doing against the citizens of the United States.
It's upside down.
Yeah,
it's
totally
exactly upside down
of what it ought to be.
Okay. Stevie Wonder says he's going to boycott Florida. Does I Ain't Gonna Play Sin City anymore, a.k.a. South Africa, ring a bell from 25 years ago when Little Steven said he's not going to play Sin City anymore because South Africa had apartheid? I mean, come on. This is just out of hand, absolutely out of hand. Zimmerman family suspects that the Obama administration, or Obama in general, I'm sure it's his minions obviously, is tapping their phones.
What would be the responsible thing that this government ought to be doing in a situation like this? They ought to be standing up and saying, hey, justice prevailed. There's going to be lots of people that don't like the judgment, and there's going to be lots of people that are going to be in favor of it.
I actually retweeted
But they will refuse to do that because there's an agenda. And this agenda, at least with regard to the Zimmerman case, started when President Obama made a grave mistake in which he labeled, in which he stated, if I had a son, it would look like Trayvon Martin.
Well, just like
completely inappropriate.
Well,
and here's why. Trayvon Martin, Barack Obama was Trayvon Martin's president. He was also Zimmerman's president. And it appears that Barack Obama and this administration has forgotten that this administration and this president belong to George Zimmerman as well.
It doesn't seem like he conducts himself in that manner, if I may be so brazen as to say that.
He doesn't conduct himself. Nobody conducts themselves in that manner in D.C.
No, that's true.
Nobody does. I don't feel like I've got a government that supports me. I feel like I've got a government, a Department of Justice, a president, a Department of Homeland Security, NSA, IRS, that simply is after me.
Mm-hmm. Just think of how things were even 3 or 4 years ago, 5 years ago. Did you fear your government? I mean, I used to think, oh, you're a conspiracy theorist. You start to say this kind of stuff, the survivalists and on. But if you look at how your rights have been totally eroded in the last 5 to 6 years now, it's mind-boggling. You have an administration here and a president that spent millions of dollars trying to hide his past, but he can look at everybody else's past, no questions asked. We have drone. We can't waterboard anybody and find out where the terrorists are, but we can put drones over America to spy and possibly later on shoot at American citizens.
Well, I mean, and we arm everybody that we're not supposed to be arming.
Well, because this government, this administration is Islamist extremist sympathizers.
Absolutely.
There's no doubt about it anymore. You just can't say this. And on that note, hold on, grab my notes here. I have so many notes. I can't keep them all.
You do.
It's terrible. Okay.
You know what that looks like? That looks like
my desk
Edward
at Fox.
Snowden's briefcase when he left the United States.
Looks like my desk at Fox is what it looks like. Obama basically has, as we have talked about before, an enormous amount of Muslim Brotherhood
members. Is this your infamous list?
Yes, my infamous list, which I keep handy.
That I can't pronounce any of them.
Okay, I'm going to pronounce them again. But the point is, they are in Homeland Security, very high up positions. Arif Ali Khan, Assistant Secretary for Policy Development
God bless
for
you.
the Department of Homeland Security. Muhammad El-Biari, Homeland Security Advisor. Rashad Hussein, Special Envoy to the OIC, that's the Organization of Islamic Conference. Salam al-Mariyati, Obama Advisor and founder of the Muslim Public Affairs Council. What percentage of Muslims is there in the United States? Does anybody know?
Fractional.
0.5%. Okay. Imam Mohammed Majid, Obama's Sharia czar, which means we're talking about Sharia law. If you are gay, or if you are a woman into women's rights, you better damn well look at Sharia law.
Or if you're a gay woman.
Well, then you're doubly in trouble. Because your husband, if you are a Muslim forced to live, or a non-Muslim forced to live under Sharia law, your husband owns you. Okay? Gays are stoned and executed. Period. It makes no sense for anybody
to
be
a
backing
Jew?
this kind of...
What if you're
really
a
in
Jew?
trouble. Hold on, I'm not done yet either. Imam Mohammed Majid, Obama's Sharia czar from the Islamic Society of North America, and Ibu Patel, the Advisory Council on Faith-Based Neighborhood Partnerships. Now, partnership right off the bat goes and tells you community organizer, which is essentially what the President of the United States was before he became a senator. This is Al Sharpton with a pretty face. That's all it is. And Al Sharpton is trying to get all kinds of things going all over the country. And of course, for protests for Trayvon this weekend. And of course, the mainstream media talks about it, so they give him free publicity.
Yep.
Insanity.
Like
Absolute
fuel for the
insanity.
fire.
Yep. And that's all he does. And it was the same thing happened in Crown Heights many years ago in New York, when a little boy, a little black kid, was run over by an Hasidic Jew in a limousine. The Hasidic Jew was driving a limousine. He was a terrible driver. I mean, there's nothing else you can say. And meanwhile, the riots erupted over this like the guy did it on purpose. It's sad. It's sad anybody had to die. It's sad anybody got hurt. And to sit there and say, like Bob Beckel has done on the 5, saying, oh, so he got a broken nose, so he only got his head pummeled, that wasn't that bad. Well, then you try it, Bob. You try having a guy who's 6'1", bigger than you, not this innocent little 12-year-old that everybody sees the picture of, but one who's into MMA fighting, one who has a history of violence, one who loves to fight, jumping on you, pummeling your head into the ground and breaking your nose. Because the gun was not pulled before that happened. In fact, from what I gather, and I do want to double check on this, it just never gets talked about. Zimmerman was told by the 911 operator to go back to his car, which he was trying to do when he got jumped. And the aggressor in this case was Trayvon Martin. If I'm wrong, I hope someone will tell me, but that is what I've heard, and it just gets no publicity. It gets absolutely no publicity. Point being is, it's a tragedy that somebody got killed, an absolute tragedy. And I retweeted what an African-American woman tweeted, because she made total sense. Her name escapes me now. But she basically said, look, you can't agree with all of these court proceedings. They're going to just, not always be 100% what you want. But it's the best court system in the world. And it's the best one the world has ever come up with.
Hey, here's
and
the bottom line.
That,
when you've got a trial, nobody is going to always agree with the verdict.
Absolutely not.
I mean, look at O.J. Simpson.
Right. So was that okay? That was okay,
I want to read something, and normally we would not do this, but it is coming from a rather reliable source.
Okay.
But I encourage you guys to look into this. And I'm not trying to throw gasoline on the fire, but this was sent to us earlier today. Number one, could it be possible that Trayvon's friend, girlfriend, or whatever she was, the eloquent and articulate Rachel Jantel.
Oh, Rachel, who basically tells you that there's 2 deciphering ways to say the N-word?
Right.
Okay.
Might have actually triggered Trayvon to react the way he did and throw the first punch because his girlfriend told him that Zimmerman might be a rapist and that he has a little brother, etc. So that's one thing to look into. Now, I'm not trying to start.
Zimmerman might be a rapist?
Yeah, that came out. I actually read that yesterday.
Oh, God.
Now, so that's the first thing. Now, research this on your own, please. The second thing is that the autopsy report shows that Trayvon had liver damage, consistent with a heavy use of something called DXM. You familiar with what that is? You ever heard of that? Okay.
No, and I grew up in the 60s, and I never heard of that.
It's basically a cough syrup to get high, and that kids usually pair with sweets.
And it ruins your liver that fast?
And the drink that he had that night.
Oh,
anyway,
it mixes with Skittles and the drink, too?
Again, do your own research on this. I'm just reading what was sent to me. At any rate, this DXM stuff, a small dose suppresses the part of the brain that causes you to cough, while increasing larger doses cause you to trip out, become a full-blown hallucinogen after about 900 milligrams. It's called purple drank, D-R-A-N-K.
So
anyway,
do a little
like research
PCP?
on this.
I wonder if it's like PCP, if it hops you up and makes you hyper.
Well, if you're hallucinating, which I don't think Trayvon was.
I don't know,
night.
but Rodney King certainly was high on PCP, and that, I mean, if you ever saw the whole video, the Rodney King video, he was taking out many men before they finally subdued him.
He was Mega Man that moment.
Well, that again shows you, I think it was ABC that doctored the tape of Zimmerman. They did the same thing with Rodney King. They would only show part of the tape, so you
didn't they try to make Zimmerman appear to be a racist by the editing of the audio?
Exactly.
Yeah. And
I believe that there's going to be a lawsuit in that department. The 911 operator actually said to Zimmerman, "Is he white, black, Hispanic? Can you explain to me?" And Zimmerman said, "I think he's black." So what they did was they edited it so it sounds like Zimmerman is starting the conversation right off the bat saying he's black, which would indicate that Zimmerman, does have a racial bias, and that was not the case whatsoever.
Exactly.
See, here's what happened as a member of the mainstream media, as I was. Ratings and money is the whole 9 yards. I'm sorry, gang. That's it. Follow the money trail.
Well, weren't you going to write a book
trail.
one time that was titled, If it bleeds, it leads. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, we just gave that away.
Yeah, really.
How dumb are we?
Here's the deal. They wanted so badly, with the name of Robert Zimmerman or George Zimmerman, they thought he, quite frankly, I'm going to come right out and say, they thought he was Jewish. Okay? They didn't realize, even though he was lighter skinned, that he was Hispanic. So now they're in a quandary because here they have a white on black crime and they don't know what to do. So all of a sudden, he's a white Hispanic because they got to get their, little ways that they talk about things straightened out in their little pea brains to try to make this worthwhile and to foment a story that really isn't there.
Absolutely.
Okay? It was a horrible crime. It was a horrible thing that happened, but it was certainly not somebody who went out hunting for a black man like they tried to say it was and shot him in cold blood. By the way, 4 children were gunned down in Chicago during the 20-day Zimmerman trial, but that's okay because that's black on black crime and that doesn't matter.
Which is acceptable to this Department of Justice.
And Al Sharpton's mind. Al Sharpton, Jesse Jackson, and this president, quite frankly, could do wonders for the black community, and they're doing nothing but race baiting. And there's money in that race baiting. Look at Tawana Brawley, okay? It was, again, a nothing story. But Al Sharpton made millions off of it and made a name for himself. When you worked weekends in New York City, Al Sharpton would have a press conference. There was nothing else to do. So, hey, Al Sharpton's got a press conference. We got something to do this weekend.
Here's
we got a story.
Al.
Exactly. I'm telling you, that's all it is. It's all it is, and it's a shame that the people of this country are buying into this crap.
Well,
because it was a horrible thing. It was a rainy night. You couldn't see what was going on. I'm not saying it was right, but it wasn't somebody who went out searching for a black man to kill. Far from it. Just like all of these crimes of the century were not anything that,
Well, and I don't think that O.J. Simpson went out trying to kill a white woman and a white man either.
That was a fit of rage.
He just did.
Well, that was, that obviously, in that case, he saw his wife.
Now, in hindsight, and after being inundated for 20 days with this Zimmerman trial, I want to publicly announce, and you weren't ready for this, so don't be shocked.
That you're gay?
No,
oh, okay.
No. That
Sorry.
I wasn't ready for that. That I want to be referred to from now on as a white Swiss Irish guy. Okay? That's what I want to be because I want to fit in with the now and I want to be cool. So I would like to be referred to as a white Swiss Irish guy.
This hyphenated stuff really gets me annoyed.
Now,
I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm super hyphenated.
Are a white Sicilian.
Actually, Sicilian Neapolitan.
Okay.
That's north and south.
I was Caesarean.
And Russian.
I was born Caesarean.
Yeah, I'm not. I was straight.
Cousin Dave's laughing. We haven't given him a mic yet, or you'd hear him laughing. Hey, let's get off of Trayvon Martin because I am absolutely sick of this crap.
No, and I really want to talk about our guest.
Exactly. That's where we want to go. We have got a show that I'm hoping is going viral.
I do too. I do too.
From the looks of things on Facebook, first of all, thank you, every one of you that has reposted or shared the announcement about tonight's show. For lack of a better word, our street team, has pulled out all the stops on this one, and we thank you. This story needs to be told. This book needs to be talked about. This book needs to be purchased. It needs to be read, and there needs to be a demand of accountability and answers with regard to what we're going to talk about tonight. And we have got an unbelievable lineup of guests that are going to be coming on here. It's amazing. These people are... Yeah, I don't have words for this, to be quite honest. This show is one that I won't ever forget.
No, and you know what? In my opinion, the news is totally upside down, because this is the kind of story, Extortion 17. If you don't know what it is, please Google it. This is the kind of story that should be getting the media play. If we had a media that would be journalists as opposed to race baiters and people looking, for ratings. But Extortion 17 is the story... You all know SEAL Team 6 now, thanks to Joe Biden. SEAL Team 6 is the elite Navy SEALs that brought down Osama bin Laden. And just a short time after that, 30 of those distinguished SEALs that had taken part in getting Osama bin Laden died in a very suspect helicopter crash in Afghanistan. And as more and more stuff is coming out on this, it doesn't seem like it's kosher at all. And we are going to talk about all the specifics of that. We're going to talk to...
Let me interject one thing. Mm-hmm. What you're going to hear tonight, and we're not taking any calls during this interview, so please refrain, and I really urge you to sit and listen, take notes. What you're about to hear tonight is factual. It's due to a great deal of research. It's due to intel that people like you, me, and Donna, and Cousin Dave cannot obtain. What you're about to hear tonight is factual, and you need to seriously pay attention to this and then start doing something about it.
Yeah, they say bad things happen when good people do nothing, and it's high time we start to do something, because this administration, in my opinion, is now getting away with murder, okay? Billy Vaughn and Karen Vaughn are the parents of Aaron Vaughn, who was one of those elite Navy SEALs that was killed in Afghanistan, that was also part of getting Osama bin Laden. Aaron Carson Vaughn had just celebrated his 30th birthday, and I get choked up just even thinking about what it must be like to lose a child, let alone a child in this nature that you thought was going to fight for your country, that was going to... They trained to fight. They didn't train to fight with their hands behind their back, and that's essentially what's happening. Anybody who's a little bit older, like myself, might remember Vietnam as well. It was the same damn situation. We have not been able to fight a war in this country, in my opinion, since World War II. Because the politics, the politicians in Washington, the mainstream media are so turning against our military that they end up having to fight with, at this point, both hands tied behind their backs. So we're going to talk to Billy Vaughn and Karen Vaughn, and also Major General Paul Vallely, who was instrumental in bringing all this together as well. And, of course, General Vallely is part of StandUpAmericaUS.org that we have now have a great partnership with now here at Cowboy Logic Radio. And
I believe it's safe to say that we now fall under the command of Major General Paul Vallely.
I've never been in the military, but somehow I feel like I have to stand up straight when we talk to him on the
I sit up straight.
Too.
When he gets on the air with us, I sit differently.
The name of the book by Billy Vaughn and Major General Vallely is called Betrayed, Exposing the High Cost of the War on Terror. Again, it's by Billy Vaughn and General Paul Vallely. It's due out shortly. We will be talking to both Billy and Karen Vaughn and Major General Paul Vallely, General Paul Vallely, coming up in just a moment. You got to hear this, gang. It's scary stuff. It's something that we need to wake up to, because our government in my opinion and in a lot of other people's opinion, is starting to betray us. We'll be back in a moment right here on Cowboy Logic Radio.
Check us out on the web at cowboylogic.us.
You're listening to Cowboy Logic Radio.
Hey everybody, this is Stan Levy, also known as the Black Man Thinking out here in California. When I'm not dealing with the friends of Governor Moonbeam out here, I tune into Cowboy Logic. Hope you do too.
The Cowboy Logic phone lines are now open. Give us a call at 917-675-3200. That's 917-675-3200.
This is real rock star wife and cancer-fighting ninja Jill Gaynor, hailing from the great red state of North Dakota, and you're listening to Cowboy Logic Radio.
I am tired of the United States military being put upon by this commander-in-chief and by all the little creepy left-wingers in this country. I'm sick of it. Oh, what we did in Iraq. What we did in Iraq was righteous. And young men and young women went over there and did it on orders from their president with the support of their Congress. I am not going to tolerate, at least on this program, the attack on our military families, what we've done. We are a great people. We are a beneficent people. We are a tolerant people. These damn puke liberals, if they lived anywhere else on the face of the earth, they'd be in gulags, they'd be enslaved, they'd be tortured or worse. They don't know how good they have it in this country. From the president on down, every day the rest of us who work for a living, who mind our own business, who pay our bills, who ask nothing from anybody. Every damn day, we have to hear this demagogue, our president, and the vice demagogue, and all the other demagogues who live in the lap of luxury, who take one trip a month, who are spending $1 million on a weekend. Our money. We have to hear them lecture us about how our country sucks, how they're going to fix it, how our success and hard work doesn't belong to us, how we don't do enough for them, for their favorite political constituencies, for the government. We have to hear this every damn day, day in and day out, as they hollow out our society, as they destroy our economic system, as they undermine our military, as they leave wide open our borders. We have to hear this crap every single day. And by the way, not just from Democrats, Republicans too. Is there nobody left in public office who will defend our way of life? That's the question. Look at this Republican Party. This Republican Party, born as the anti-slavery party, born as the abolitionist party, prepared to take on the federal government, prepared to take on a third of the states, born in courage. Look at it today. Pathetic. Led by weasels. The Republican Party motto today is, what is the motto today? Let them eat mush. You shouldn't fear illegal aliens. You shouldn't fear the destruction of the culture. You shouldn't fear this, you shouldn't fear that. What are you, a conspiracy nut? What are you, paranoid? From the Republicans. It's unbelievable. So no, I'm not going to give time to mental patients on the left, the philosophy of the stupid. Oh, but don't worry, don't you know, they support the military. Oh, yes. While they're taking their health care away, they support them. You take health care benefits away from men and women who volunteer to defend our country with their lives and give it to people who haven't earned it, who sit on their asses. That's right, I said it. Claim to be victims and claim to have certain economic rights. That is a right to your labor. And I've had enough of it.
You're listening to Cowboy Logic Radio.
Batter up, guys. Baseball is in the home stretch, and if you're planning to go to a ball game, there's no better way to travel than with Star Coaches Incorporated. Traveling with a Star Coach means you'll be riding in a 45-foot custom-built coach with plush leather interior, flat-screen TVs with in-motion satellite or refrigerator, and a bathroom. So why would you want to head to the ballpark in a cramped compact? Visit StarCoachUSA.com today to find the best coach for you. Star Coaches promises exceptional customer service, impeccable driving standards, and extraordinary amenities in each of the limo and party buses. There's no doubt you'll arrive in style, and the entire experience will be unforgettable. Leave the driving to the pros and book a Star Coach. Let them help you choose the perfect bus that fits your needs and budget. What are you waiting for? Visit StarCoachUSA.com today.
Hi, I am Parker. I am only 15 years old, and I am already sick and tired of what our politicians at the local, state, and federal level are doing to my financial future. I am sick of the irresponsibility of our elected officials and the lobbyists who continue to financially abuse my country. I am a 15-year-old kid. I approve this message, and I listen to Cowboy Logic Radio.
Ladies and gentlemen, Representative Hank Johnson, Democrat, Georgia.
Mr. Speaker, like a kid at a carnival, I rise in full support of H.R. 527, the Responsible Helium Administration and Stewardship Act of 2013. Mr. Speaker, I'm relieved that And I'm sure that the American people are relieved as well that Congress is finally going to do something about one of the most pressing issues today. That is, we've got to ensure access to helium for all. I'm pleased to support this bill, which shows that this Tea Party Congress will make the tough choice to keep children's birthday parties on schedule and give industries that rely on helium the lift that they deserve. Imagine, Mr. Speaker, a world without balloons. How can we make sure that the injustice of there being no helium for comedians to get that high-pitched voice that we all hold near and dear to our hearts? Imagine a world without balloons. Today, the House has chosen to just simply float above it all. And finally, we're going to do something for the American people, and we should all pat ourselves on the back for that.
Don't you just wish you could do that to the turds in Congress?
Do me a favor. Could you say senator instead of ma'am?
I love these members that get up and say, read the bill.
What difference at this point does it make?
The whole island will become so overly populated that it will tip over and capsize.
But we have to pass the bill so that you can find out what is in it.
We know that the free market is nonsense.
This liberal will be all about socializing, will be about basically taking over and the government running all of your companies.
The time has come for unfiltered, politically incorrect common sense. Welcome to the wild world of Cowboy Logic.
Welcome back to the wild woolly world of Cowboy Logic. Good evening, everyone. I'm Donna Fiducia, along with Don Neuen. And again, we have such special guests tonight that if the mainstream media did its job, which it isn't, which is the reason why we're here, these people would be a household name. What has happened here would be the subject of dinner time conversation, if families even eat dinner together anymore. I'm talking about Extortion 17 and what I believe is the betrayal by our U.S. government of 30 heroes that got Osama bin Laden. Billy Vaughn and Karen Vaughn are the parents of Aaron Carson Vaughn, who was one of those 30 elite Navy SEAL team members that was killed on that horrible night, August 6, 2011, when a Chinook chopper with a total of 30 elite troops was shot down in Afghanistan. And Aaron had just celebrated his 30th birthday. Also joining us on the air is Major General Paul Vallely, who helped Billy Vaughn write this book. And I've had the pleasure of interviewing Major General Vallely on the air many times at Fox News. And it's always a pleasure to have him on the air because in this kind of format, he can say whatever he wants, and
I just like talking to him on the phone. How you doing, General?
True. I'm fine, Don, and Donna.
Yes, and Karen and Billy Vaughn, again, thank you so much for joining us. Let me just give a plug to the book right off the bat. It's called Betrayed, Exposing the High Cost of the War on Terror by Billy Vaughn and General Vallely. And we thank you all for joining us here tonight on Cowboy Logic Radio. Karen, I want to start with you if I could. You sent us a whole bunch of information, great background information on what happened leading up to this that horrible night. In general, well, actually, any three of you can answer this. In general, do you feel this is actually payback, or was it just a misstep given that Joe Biden outs essentially the Navy SEALs 2 days after the Osama bin Laden raid, which is something that's unprecedented to begin with?
Well, I think, and first let me just say, Donna and Don, thank you so much for having us on tonight. What an honor to be talking with you two, great American patriots, great American heroes, and we're so thankful that you're giving us this time to just talk about our story. But as far as that question, that's like $1 million question of the day. Billy and I have really tried to stay away from the conspiracy theories, and they certainly have. There are certainly some valid issues circling around that make you question some of the events of that night in conspiratorial ways. But we have found that the evidence that we have accumulated is enough to know that terrible things went wrong that night, documented issues without even going into the conspiracy issues. And those are the things that we've chosen to battle straight on and face first, look them in the eye and deal with them.
Absolutely.
So that's kind of where we are on that, yeah.
And I agree. I almost think, in my opinion, it's the fact that Joe Biden just says whatever he thinks. And it's like he doesn't think after he says it, but that's another story for another time. So give us a little background on this whole situation that led up to Extortion 17, because rarely would you put that many of an elite SEAL team on one chopper, let alone a chopper that's so antiquated. Anybody?
Yes, go ahead, Billy. I'm sorry.
Well, Donna, one thing that we have found out, and we found this out from the guys on the ground, strange as it may seem, that the SEALs do sometimes, when there is an emergency, when there is something to get there quickly for, they do crowd a lot of men onto one chopper, because the experience has shown that what the enemy will do is they will let the first chopper land, and then as the second chopper comes in, they will attempt to shoot that out of the sky. That's what men on the ground have told. That's what shooters have told us. Mm-hmm. That's what the military has explained in the documentation. Now, let me give you the downside to that. Two things. One is, in the testimony, there seems to be a lot of questions as to why the SEALs were called in to start with. Men who were in theater, men who were on the ground, men who were in the battle space that night saying, we don't know why the SEALs were called in. In over 400 missions, we'd never done one like this. We don't know why they were called in without softening the landing zone first. And so that's one thing. The second thing is yes, that strategy works fine unless the enemy knows your strategy. And we believe, because of the way that our men have been forced to operate over there, the way that our special operators, our Rangers, our Marine Recon, our Navy SEALs, the way that they are being compromised, that the enemy, and I'm going to say enemy/allies, Afghans, have all the info. They have all the strategy. They have all the techniques. They have all the operating procedures that our special operators are operating by, so they would know to tell the insurgents, hey, the second chopper's not even coming into the HLZ, so center on the first chopper. So we have compromised our men in such a way that no one can tell for sure exactly what happened that night, even the people involved. There are so many contradicting conversations about why the SEALs went in, why they were all on one chopper, why there was no pre-assault fire. I mean, and it's just unreal, Donna. It's just unreal. It's chaotic in the battle zone.
That's what I just don't understand. General Vallely, I'm old enough, I'll admit it, to remember that in Vietnam, after a while, our boys over there were pretty much told, you really just have to fight this war with one hand tied behind your back. And it was sad because so many of the locals would jump out from anywhere and attack our soldiers. And I remember Lieutenant Calley, that was a major story where something went terribly wrong, whether it was wrong or right. But, you know, when you're in the heat of battle, you're forced to defend yourself. Now, fast forward to a situation here in Iraq and Afghanistan, which, as a layman, still, from what I've seen, is even 10 times worse. You can't do anything to engage the enemy. And the fact is, with the way they are, their allegiance moves from place to place with whoever happens to be paying them off or whatever they happen to believe. And it puts our men and women in serious harm's way.
Well, Donna, you go back all the way to World War II, where we took on two major powers of the world, the Nazis and the Japanese, and we defeated them in 3 years and 10 months because we had a strategy for victory in both theaters. Then we go to Korea, which we ended up in an agreement with the North Vietnamese and have paid the price 60 years now for that strategy. And I was always a big believer in backing President MacArthur, General MacArthur, not President Truman, because he sought victory, because we had committed all of those forces over there in Korea. And then we advanced forward to Vietnam, which became a very political war. And once the rules of engagement were placed on the forces over there, Even the aircraft missions were almost well, not all cases, but many cases approved all the way back to Washington, D.C. So we had aircraft going in, taking out what we call secondary and tertiary targets, even a bamboo bridge. And we weren't really seeking victory over there because we never really took the war other than air attacks on North Vietnam. And then you progress forward to the Middle East, where we got entangled in what we call nation building, which is not a mission for the armed forces and shouldn't be. The armed forces are there to protect America, secure America. If there's a threat to America, we neutralize that threat wherever it may be. So with that, we got into a very political environment where we put on these very stringent rules of engagement on our soldiers. And Billy and I cover that in the book in great depth, as you'll see when the book comes out in August, that we, in fact, have tied the hands of many of our armed forces that are out there on the point of the spear in the front lines, our special forces, our infantry, and so on. When that happens, we can see all the way back to Pat Tillman, that story, the cover-up. Mm-hmm. And then we proceed forward to Extortion 17, which was August of 2011, and then forward to Benghazi. So we've seen our armed forces used in missions and strategy that should not be involved in, and put in a situation where we're not providing not only sound strategy, but sound tactics. The Extortion 17 mission was not well planned, not the right equipment. From our investigation, we're very, very convinced that this was a set-up ambush. We know the Afghans were involved, notifying the Taliban in the Tangi Valley. So when you look at all of these things now, we have our best and brightest going down in a helicopter that dated back to the late 50s and early 60s, retrofitted in the 1980s, that was not a special ops ship. We have MH-47s, which are dedicated just to special operations missions. So the whole thing, when they briefed the families, we found out there was a lot of cover-up. There was a intention to shut the families off and don't complain. Billy and I go into that in great detail, and of course Karen knows all of that because she was there when she witnessed a 4-star admiral coming into their home. So the exposure that we're going to provide to the American people is the continued deceit, deception, and lies by senior government officials, and the victims of all of this are these young men who have been killed and the families that now suffer from that.
You know, reading some of this that you sent us, one of the SEAL Team 6 members said, "I didn't join to be sacrificed, I joined to fight." And that really sums it up quite a bit. Billy, Don had a question. I'm sorry.
General, for our listeners and for myself and probably Donna, would you explain the origin of rules of engagement? Because in World War I and World War II, I'm sure that there was protocol that needed to be followed, but then all of a sudden the noose started tightening around rules of engagement, and I'm going to assume that is purely coming from the political side of things. But can you explain to us when that noose started getting tight, and then really tight and ridiculously tight?
Well, if you go back and study military history and the wars even back to the Roman Empire, the Roman legion commanders all had certain rules of engagement that they set for engaging the enemy on whatever lands they were fighting on. And it could deal with the local villages, it could deal with local people. But as we've progressed through time, we've always had limited rules of engagement. Some of them have been political, of course, but others, for the most part, have been delegated down to the commanders to determine in their area of operations what rules of engagement would fit, because the theater in Europe differed much greatly than the theater in the Far East, in the Philippines, in the islands out there, in China. So as we progressed into Vietnam, we had the politicals, and many of them who had never served in the military. We had such an individual as McNamara, who should have gone to prison for the decisions he made as Secretary of Defense. And of course, he wrote a book and did a lot of mea culpas on Vietnam. But it's gotten so bad now that we have the Judge Advocate Corps, the legal people of the military, actually being and influencing combat missions. Commanders should only be involved once they've been given the authority to operate in a given area, the mission to operate and defeat the enemy and come back to home base. And we have seen a politicization of the military, of our senior commanders, admirals, and generals have fallen into this political environment rather than being military strategists who seek victory once the decision is made to go to war.
It's getting to be like anything else in this country, unfortunately, politics over common sense. Billy, I wanted to ask you a little bit about the Special Forces training that your son had to go through, and tell us a little bit about that night that he called you and essentially said, right after bin Laden got caught, "Dad, we got him." I can't imagine how proud you must have been.
Absolutely, Don. Karen, it was Sunday night, May 1st. Karen and I were here at home, and Aaron called on my cell phone, and that's what he said. He said, "Dad, we got him." And I said, "Got who, son?" And he said, "Dad, I can't tell you who over the phone." He said, "Just think about it. We got him." And he said, "Go in and turn on Fox News." And he said, in about an hour and a half, Fox is going to report who we got. They don't know yet, but they've been notified that they're going to make an announcement. And so I figured it out quickly, and Karen and Karen and I talked about it. We called our family, we called some friends. But I'll tell you this. Even though I assumed and I thought who got him, Aaron didn't tell me who got him. I just knew that the American military had gotten him. Of course, I assumed it was the group that my son was a part of, but whatever it was, it came on TV that the USA had gotten the man responsible for killing nearly 3,000 Americans on September 11, 2001. Now, the thing about it is all America rejoiced without knowing specifically who had done the raid. But all that changed quickly when the Vice President of the United States, through his arrogance and his stupidity, outed the group that was responsible for taking down Osama bin Laden. And that quickly changed what occurred in our family, what occurred throughout the families of all special operators in the United States. And Karen can tell you more specifically about that, because our son, Aaron, had another conversation with his mother some 48 hours later.
Karen, do you want to elaborate on that?
Yes, sure. Actually, the very next day, and don't let me forget, I'd like to go back and talk to you just a minute about what these guys go through to become who they are.
Yes, I got that.
Which makes it so much more difficult of a loss to absorb. But on May 3rd, Biden out of the SEALs. On May 4th, Aaron called home. And I rarely ever heard my son sound nervous about anything, and Billy will talk about this in the book. But he said, "Mom, listen to me," and he was whispering, and he said, "Mom, you need to shut down all of your social media. I mean, get any reference to me or any of my buddies off of it right now." And I said, "Of course, son." And I said, "What's going on?" He said, "Well, we've been notified that there's been chatter, and all of our lives are in danger, including yours, Mom. So clean it off right now." Now on May 4th, we heard Robert Gates come out and express disgust over Joe Biden's outing of the Navy SEALs. And a few days later, he was with families at Camp Lejeune and reiterated what my son had called home and told us, that now their families were concerned for their safety. And I'd just like to stop right here before I even talk about the next instigating factors, because I want to say to you, Donna and Don, do you think that if you had leaked this sort of classified, serious, life-altering information which targeted a small group of American citizens who had taken out the figurehead for all sorts of evil on this planet. Just think about this, the retaliation that is there, the anger, the hatred that's there for America anyway, and you single out who these men are. Do you think that you would still be on the radio today, or do you think you or I would be sitting in a federal prison right now?
Well, this is why I can't believe how much they're going after Snowden. I mean, this is 10 times worse. Snowden was trying to tell the American people what the government was doing.
Well, and to make matters worse, it gets worse than that. Because, as you know, Leon Panetta was the director of the CIA at that time, and the CIA led the Osama bin Laden raid. In June of that same year, there is a very serious timeline right here. In June of that same year, Leon Panetta leaked what unit it was. Now, we're down to 17 families in this nation who have had a target put on their back. This is serious. And nobody has answered for that. And let me just back up and say that in May we have documented sworn testimony of military intel reports that over 100 Pakistani Taliban made their way into the Tangi River Valley with the express goal of shooting down a NATO chopper full of U.S. Special Forces in retaliation for the Osama bin Laden raid. So there is a track going on here. And by the way, let me back up 1 second to Leon Panetta and tell you that the Inspector General has acknowledged that he was instructed to protect Leon Panetta from the repercussions of his act until after his retirement, which he did.
Which, of course, nobody else gets any kind of treatment like that. Certainly not the families.
It's treasonous. It is treasonous treatment, and it's.
Let me say something there, Karen, right quickly, if I can. Yes, Donna, the families do get that kind of treatment because let me tell you this: we knew that had happened. We knew that it had concerned our son. We knew that they were alerted that targets had been put on their back by the administration. However, when our son was killed, Karen and I were invited Karen and I and our daughter-in-law were invited on the Today Show with Matt Lauer. And all this was going back through my mind as when our son was killed. And I made the statement on the Today Show that wolves in high places, sheep in high places, had endangered the sheepdogs of this country. And I was called out immediately by Navy people for making this political. So they will come down on the families.
Oh, no, that's what I'm saying. They're not there to help you like they would have. That's what I meant to say. I'm sorry you misconstrued that.
Sorry, I misunderstood.
No, I'm saying here we are trying to help Leon Panetta until he retires, and the families don't get anything like that.
No, sir. In fact, we were told right off the spot. You cannot be political. I'm not a politician. I'm a father. Karen is a mother of a dead American warrior. We're not politicians. We're citizens of this country. President Barack Hussein Obama and Vice President Joseph Robinette Biden, for months after the bin Laden raid, had done nothing but be political. But as soon as our son was dead, we were told by the United States government, you can't be political. And even though we had no information about anything our son or any of the rest of the Navy SEALs were doing, we were told immediately that you're going to endanger the Navy SEALs if you speak about this, when we had no information to speak about. So there again, as it is in every facet of the American citizen's life, the elite in Washington, D.C. have one standard to live by, just as you said a while ago with Snowden, and the American citizen who's in their home paying their bills and paying their taxes are expected to live to a higher is a higher example than our elected officials in Washington, D.C.
Well, there's nothing this administration does that's not political, in my humble opinion. And therefore, we have the Second Amendment still to protect ourselves from a tyrannical government. But that, too, is the subject of another show. Don had some questions for you, too.
Well, actually, I had a question for the General. And you got me sidetracked on that, so I may have to come back.
I tend to do that because I'm ADD.
General, here's what I wanted to ask. The absolute idiotic faux pas that was created by Joe Biden as well as Panetta, I can't think of an explanation that I'm even remotely comfortable with. I mean, I can't. You can't go, oops. What is your expert opinion as to why these guys would do such devastating damage to these warriors and the families of them?
Well, I think number one, they have their agenda. Number two, I think they're totally inept, unqualified for office. Third, I think they're not honest. I think they don't abide by the same things that I learned at West Point, duty, honor, and country. And as a cadet, I learned you do not lie, cheat, or steal, or tolerate those that do. So unless those values are put back in our government, we're going to continue to see those that are very selfish, they're arrogant, they're out for their own careers and their next step, the revolving door in Washington, as we know, exists. But I'm more surprised by the senior admirals and generals that don't stand up to be counted and not tolerate this politicalization of our military and unsound strategies, because the military, when they go to war, should have a sound strategy to win and come back home. Don and Donna, let me say one thing here about the book. You can go to the website, www.specialopsbetrayed.com, and the book can be pre-ordered now. It'll be out in August, but there's a special discount. And I know this is an advertisement, but I wanted to really get it out to the audience that we're up and running, and we'd like radio shows, TV all around the country to take a look at what we're going to expose about these inadequacies and the inept, corrupt government officials that we have that are costing the lives of our precious sons. And as you know, I lost my son in 2004 in Special Forces. And so my heart is right there with Billy and Karen and the others on losing their son when we don't have people in office who can stand up and really guide America in a way that when we go to war to protect the American people, we go to war for victory, and we don't utilize our human resources as cannon fodder and apply these restrictive rules of engagement that don't allow them to win and return home safely.
Billy and Karen, talk a little bit about what a Navy SEAL has to go through, the extensive training. You know, as a mom, my friends had Eagle Scouts. Their sons that became Eagle Scouts. I thought that was such a big deal.
Donna didn't even want her kids playing football.
Sorry. It's just a northern...
But I'm from the South, and my kids played football.
No, but this is unbelievable what a Navy SEAL has to go through. Tell us a little bit about it.
Well, Donna, I'm going to let Karen answer that, but I want to tell the folks something very clearly. Why I asked General Vallely to help me, because, like I said before, Karen and I are just parents of a warrior who's been killed, and the information that we got, we thought we knew what it looked like to us, but I needed an expert. To see if what we were seeing here was really as bad as it seemed, and General Vallely, finding out and knowing and meeting him and knowing who he was, we needed an expert, a military expert, because this Karen and I are not people who are against the military. We support the military. We're a military family. We were proud of our son and everything that he was doing for this republic. So when we began to find out this information, when we began to discover these things, I had to have somebody look at this who could tell me, Billy, you're wrong, or Billy, I can't believe this, or Billy, this is where we've been coming this is who we've been coming for the last past many years, you know, and this is where we are. And I was so thankful that General Paul Vallely was willing to assist me and advise me on this project to help me with so many things that I'm totally ignorant about, not being a military man. So I just wanted to say that.
And unfortunately, your feelings were probably more than accurate, which is just bodes terribly for our country. But Karen, tell us a little bit about what you have to go through to become a Navy SEAL, an elite Navy SEAL.
Absolutely. You know, as everybody knows, you see all these shows about Hell Week and all this stuff, but in all honesty, the difficult part comes after you become a SEAL, I think, for most of these guys. Of course, getting through that course is astronomical. And just to give you the stats, Aaron went through a winter Hell Week, which he was very, very proud of. I was about to say he is proud of. He was very, very proud of. His class started with about 160 men, and less than 10 of them finished, if you can imagine those odds. And Aaron was one of them, and his name is on a wall in Coronado, a wall called First Time Every Time, which means every single evolution that was ever required of him, he completed the very first time. And I want to tell you guys why that's so spectacular and what breed of men we're talking about here. And Aaron wasn't this unique. I'm sure every guy who makes it in here has some story just as incredible as Aaron's. But Aaron did all that with no ACL in his left knee, no anterior cruciate ligament. What happened is, just before the first game of his senior high school football game, he obliterated the ACL in his left knee. And 2 failed surgeries later, 1 rehab and then another failed surgery, his dreams of becoming a Navy SEAL were crushed. I remember sitting in the orthopedic surgeon's office with him the day he said, Aaron, there was nothing else I could do when I opened your knee up, and watching the anguish that Aaron suffered. And the reason why is because Aaron had been created to be a Navy SEAL, and I'll say that very clearly. From the time he was 8 years old, he would tell anyone who would listen that one day he was going to be a Navy SEAL. And his frame, his body, did not reek with that, you know, it didn't put out that sort of confidence to everybody else. He was a 6'4" tall kid. So he was tall and skinny and lanky most of his life until he reached his young adult years. And so it just made people chuckle to hear him say it. But I'm going to tell you something. God had planted a warrior's heart inside that boy, and he always knew what he was supposed to be. So after the second ACL surgery was a failure and there was nothing they could do and they had to leave him without that, they told him that he would have to wear a brace on his knee for, you know, forever. Anytime that he wanted to do anything athletic, or he could do a lot of damage to his joint, you know, permanent damage that would be, you know, really, really, really bad. So he did. He agreed to that. He accepted that in his heart. He went to college. He got a career. He had a beautiful career here on a lush golf course, in golf course management here in South Florida. And I'll tell you what, then came 9/11, 2001. And the boy could not rest. When he heard about the passengers on Flight 93, something stirred in that kid's heart. That warrior was reborn again, and he came home on his 21st birthday shortly after that day, that fateful day. And he said, Mom and Dad, I stopped by the recruiter's office on my way home, and I joined the SEAL Challenge program. And it's going to make me cry talking about this, because we looked at him across the table and we said, son, you'll never make it. And we are not discouraging people, but we were saying, son, you don't have an ACL in your knee. How did they even let you in? Well, he had to lie on his entrance exam, because they would have never even let him in the program if they had known that he didn't have an ACL in his knee. So long story short, like I said, that just makes it all the more, you know, he looked at us that day. Let me back up. He looked at us that day and said, I will be a Navy SEAL, because this is what God has created me to be. I've always known it, and I can do it. And he did it. I mean, the boy went straight through. He achieved such accolades, and you know, I don't know how many miles they swim and how many miles they run and boats on their heads, but I can tell you that they let him come home for his sister's wedding just after Hell Week, which was kind of unprecedented. But I guess he'd impressed him enough that they thought, you know what, go home. And he spent 2 days here with us for her wedding. And his head was skinned up, his body was raw, his flesh was chewed up between his thighs, his arms, from sand and grit, and all that time in the surf. And like I said, it was a winter hell week. And, it's kind of funny to say it, but body cavity checks were as important to staying alive as food and water and the couple hours of sleep they got over the 5-day period of Hell Week. And I'll tell you how much they drive them. He called his father and I the night that Hell Week finished, and he made it. And we couldn't understand. It was about midnight here because he was in San Diego, and we couldn't understand what he was saying. His mouth was so swollen from dehydration, and he was trying to tell us that he got his brown shirt. And the brown shirt lays on the shore for those who finish Hell Week, and it has their name stenciled on the chest. And, that boy, there was never a more proud moment in his life. But I'll tell you what, that's just the beginning of becoming a Navy SEAL. Those moments are. And I'll tell you how bad it was. He actually hallucinated one day that he saw the Cowardly Lion from The Wizard of Oz in his cereal bowl. That's how bad it is, But they just keep going. And then I just want to tell you that to become a member of SEAL Team 6, Aaron said these words to his dad and I. He said, becoming a member of SEAL Team 6 made Buds and Hell Week look like a cakewalk. So this is my frustration. These guys who get to that Tier 1 status, who work that hard because they want to be warriors, and then we send them over as diplomats. It's unacceptable, completely unacceptable. And not only that, these men work, they give up everything that the rest of us enjoy, everything. They barely ever lay their heads on their own pillows at home. They give it all up to earn a right to step onto a chopper and fly into a hot battle zone. The least we could do is give them equipment that they deserve.
And that's right, and plan the tactics so they go in and win and come back home safely. Karen and Billy, I just wanted to point out to Don and Donna, I had the opportunity in the last 24 hours to meet with Charles Woods, whose son Ty Woods died in Benghazi. And they told me today, after I told them I'd be on the show with you tonight, they send their best of another lost son. Ty was 41 years old, Navy SEAL. But when you meet with the families and see the devastation that it causes to the families and the extended families, and the fact is the government lies and deceives not only the American people, but these families. And that's why Billy and Karen, I took on the project because of my son, but I feel that we can't give up. And Charles Wood said that today, and he wanted to pass that to you. We can't stop as parents. We have to find the truth.
And you know what? That's why
Thank you, Carol.
I haven't come near having a family member do anything close to this. But my kids, they're reaping the benefits of the blood, sweat, and tears from children like yours. And what's happened, in my opinion, is Don and I are just trying to do what little we can to try to wake people up. Because that's our little part. Like they always say, try to act locally, think globally, or vice versa. But that's the only thing you can do is try to wake people up. And if you just throw facts at people, after a while they can't argue with you anymore. They start with feelings, and then all of a sudden they're going, oh, gee, I guess you're right. Because all this, another thing that we have to mention is that this occurred before Benghazi. So none of this is getting looked at. Benghazi's getting swept under the rug, and we got the same person reelected, in my humble opinion, because Benghazi was not vetted properly by the mainstream media. But then again, the mainstream media is not good at vetting anything.
And Romney did not press the point when we asked him to, in the second debate, to press Benghazi and go back to all these other lies and deception of the government. So. I think that upsets a lot of us more than anything. That's continuation, whether the Republicans or Democrats. That they even in the House hearings, Don, they go so far. They go to the 20-yard line and then they all give up, and nobody gets into the end zone really with any finality of who's responsible. And none of these people who are responsible ever go to jail.
No.
I want to ask a couple of questions and have you, and it doesn't matter who expands on this, because in my opinion, you all are experts in what we're talking about here. The first is that Aaron made a comment, and And I'm assuming by the documentation that I have that he made this comment to you, Billy and Karen, and that is that the Afghan forces are loyal only to the highest bidder. And I want you to expand on that, because that doesn't just mean, here's $10, but the highest bidder definitely means something more than a minor payoff. So what did he mean by that?
Well, just let me back up just a little bit there, Don, if you will. When he came home from Afghanistan in March 2010, we had a big family celebration back in Tennessee. And him and his wife and little boy came from Virginia, and all of us from Florida went to Tennessee, where we're all from. And as he and I were talking, he said, Dad, he says, we never tell them. Now, he's speaking here about the Afghan commandos who travel with the SEALs and the Rangers, special operators. He said, Dad, we never tell them where we're going until we get there. He said, because if we do, the enemy knows we're coming. And he said, a lot of times when we get there, they won't fight with us because they know the guys. And he said they're always loyal to the highest bidder. And if you understand, and I've learned, and I know the general knows a lot more than me about this region, it's not like Afghanistan, it's not like Iraq, where there are basically only three tribes or three groups: the Sunnis, the Shias, and the Kurds. I understand in Afghanistan there are at least 10 or more major tribes, and so they're always warring with each other. Their loyalty swaps back and forth, and their loyalty is to who's giving them the most benefit of being on their side. And that's exactly what he meant at that time when he said that. Their loyalty switches quite regularly. Fast forward to 2011, when Aaron didn't come home, we changed our strategy to operating with a group called the OCG, the Occupational Coordination Group. And this is a group that's directed by Karzai. From what I understand from some people inside the military, the United States government, the United States military is very minimally involved with being allowed to vet the men, the commandos who work within this group. Yet they work directly with our special forces. And even in discussion with a man who was responsible in 2010 for doing some of the vetting of the Afghanis, he said to me and Karen, he said our greatest fear is the OCG. He said because we're not allowed to vet these people, and he even went as far as to say the vetting with the Afghanis is never over. It's a continual process with the same individual over and over again because their ideology is changing all the time. So what Aaron had told me in 2010 had become a bigger problem in 2011, and even after Aaron died, we've been able to talk to some Rangers and some SEALs, and one guy from Dev Group, recently retired, like a couple years getting out, but he said, I'm getting out and I can't take it anymore. This is not a guy who got in to get an education. This is a man who's been in there for nearly 20 years in Navy SEALs. And he said to Karen and I, Mr. and Mrs. Vaughn, our greatest fear is being shot in the back while out on an op with our Afghan allies because of their ideology. But our leaders refuse to recognize this. So that's what I got to say about it, Don. I mean, their loyalty changes from day to day.
At which you're talking about then the Mexican standoffs that he was referring to.
Exactly. That's what he said. He said you can't believe how many Mexican standoffs we've had while being out on an op with our allies over some kind of cultural deal or something like that,
And Hamid Karzai is no friend of ours, that's for sure. I've done so many press conferences with him where he's so arrogant. In fact, one press conference I did with him at Fox in the middle of the night that Rumsfeld did on the spur of the moment, just showed up and they did a joint press conference. It was a joke. There were questions being asked in native tongue, whatever that is, and Rumsfeld would say, "What'd he say?" And Karzai would say, "It doesn't matter. Go on to the next question." It was really unbelievable. And because he only wants things getting out that he wants to get out. It's totally being controlled.
And Donna, what you said is exactly the point. I mean, see, I don't blame the Afghans. You know, Rumsfeld knows, Obama knows, Americans who seek to know the truth know who the Afghans are. So our American government knows who the Afghans are. Our American military leaders know who the Afghans are, but yet they continue to subject our warriors and force our warriors to submit to these Afghans, knowing who they are. They can't be trusted. They're corrupt, just as all those things you said, and risking their lives and making them vulnerable to being killed by their so-called allies.
And that's
what's
Taliban.
Criminal about all this.
This is what we're supposedly fighting against to begin with. The Taliban,
Exactly.
Al-Qaeda. This is why I saw those towers burning. I didn't see a plane go in, but I saw those towers burning. And I've seen the raw footage of people jumping out of those towers. It's maddening. And to think now we have a president that is essentially in bed with the Muslim Brotherhood, who they tried to sell us down the road as being secular and peaceful and the whole 9 yards and wanting a democracy. Far from it. The Egyptian people aren't stupid. They see what's going on. Nothing's being talked about there.
Yeah, the Egyptian seems to have a better handle on it than we do.
Yeah, we ought to take a lesson from them. Hey, again, let me just plug the book here. It's called Betrayed, Exposing the High Cost of the War on Terror by Billy Vaughn and General Paul Vallely, who we have on the air, along with Karen Vaughn. And you can buy it right now. It's out in August, but buy it early. Buy it often. SpecialOpsBetrayed.com is the website. You can get it and get it at a discount. There are a couple of websites, too, for our son, FOROUR son.us, and Operation 300.com. That's Operation300.com. And Billy and Karen, I assume that's where people can get more information as well?
Yes, the For Our Son website is where you can get more information about this. Operation 300 site is a nonprofit foundation our family started to give week-long extreme adventure camp experiences to children of fallen soldiers. So that's what that one is.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's really cool. Yeah.
I hate to go back to this, but we really have to. After SEAL Team 6, the chopper crashed, and again, there's so much surrounding that as far as questions as to why you would use a Chinook.
I got a million questions, by the way, guys. Question. I hope that you're going to give me the time.
But I want to go over a little bit more about what happened afterwards, especially the situation with what was done with the caskets.
Right. You want me to tackle this one?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. It is standard procedure, we have found out from many other people who have lost loved ones in this war, that within about 2 weeks of your loved one's death, you should receive a copy of what's called the ramp ceremony, and that is a dignified transfer ceremony that takes place in the theater of battle, where the caskets are loaded onto the planes to be brought back to Dover Air Base for the families to be reunited with the remains of their loved one.
So this was a tape that was done at the ceremony in Afghanistan.
That's correct. This was the ramp ceremony in Afghanistan. Well, none of the families, to our knowledge, ever got a copy of it. And in January of this year, somebody visited our house. We may talk about that a little bit later, but in that visit, we were asked if we had ever received a copy of that. And remember, this is January of 2013. We still have no copy of this ramp ceremony, and now we clearly understand why the families weren't given a copy of it. Somebody visited our house and asked us if we had a copy. We said no, we did not. He said that he would get us a copy. He's a member of the military. And 2 weeks went by after his visit, and I had never received anything. Wrote him and said, where is it? And basically he wrote back and said, there's been an excessive amount of red tape trying to put this in your hands. I'm going to send you my personal copy. He overnighted that. We had it the next day, and when we finally watched it, Billy and I had no preconceived notions. We just expected it to be a very sad, tragic difficult thing to watch, watching our son's casket be brought back to the United States.
Well, it gives you closure, I would think, if nothing else.
Well,
right?
we wanted to see it. We wanted to see what took place in Afghanistan. It is difficult when your child dies 7,000 miles from you and you never get to see their body. There was a terrible fire, and the bodies were identified by DNA and dental records. So, and that's important to understand because of what I'm about to tell you. So when we finally put this in, we're watching this entire ceremony. It's beautiful. It's making us cry. And then all of a sudden, we hear an imam start singing a prayer over the caskets. And our jaws dropped. And both of us looked at each other, stomachs turned, and said, what in the heck is happening right here? And I wanted, to make a long story short, we both decided we wanted a fair translation of this. We knew immediately we needed to know what he said, but we also wanted to make sure that we got exactly what he said, not a translation influenced by the what was going on in that video. So what I did was I separated the audio from the video and then took only the clip, only the small audio clip of the imam praying, and I sent it through a third party to somebody who didn't know we were, did not know the origin of it, not even what family it was associated with or any situation, and just asked for a raw translation. And what we got back has now been verified by at least 8 different certified translators. And this is what it said. And in it, he mocks the God of Abraham, the God of Moses, by saying that if the Quran had been sent to the mountain as the tablets were, that the mountain would have crumbled in its presence. But worse than that, he proclaims the Muslims to be the winner and damns the infidels' souls to burn in hellfire. You know what? I'm going to tell you something. Billy and I do not care what he said because our son was a child of God. And there is nothing that a mom could say that would alter for 1 second what happened to the eternal soul of our son. He was carried up to heaven the moment his breath left his body, and we know that. But what we are furious, livid about is that in an act of submission and appeasement by the American government, they allowed the final disgracing of American soldiers' bodies in such a unspeakable betrayal to those men who fought and died this battle of Islamic jihad. They let an Islamic imam pray over their bodies. To me, it is one of the most, other than his death, it's the most offensive thing I've ever heard in my life. And then, as we watched that, we realized something. When all of the families went to Dover to meet the bodies, and remember, this is a mass death. 38 caskets came in, 8 of them draped with the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan's flag, and 30 draped with the American flag. It bothered all of us. Everybody that I've talked to said, yeah, there was something that really rubbed us wrong, that we had to watch 8 Afghani caskets be brought in with equal ceremony to our sons at that American base and that American service. But the reason that happened was because remains were not identifiable in theater. They had to be brought here. Many of them had to be brought here to be identified, to separate the Afghanis from the Americans and then send them back. But what we realized when we watched that is that, again, in an act of appeasement and an act of submission, where I believe the Afghanis are over there laughing their rears off at us because we are so stupid with this sort of political correctness, it is very probable that at least one or more American soldiers came home under the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan's flag because the bodies had not been identified.
It's just reprehensible. Now, absolutely reprehensible.
It is almost an unspeakably painful thought for me to process when I think about my son and the passionate love he had for this nation, that he could have been potentially betrayed in that final act of disgusting betrayal. He might have come home under the nation's flag that he fought against.
Has the government said anything to you at all? Has anybody said anything?
Yes, they have. They are offended that we were offended by that. That is the only communication we have received from the federal government, from the Navy, is the fact that we spoke out about that, and they let us know that was offensive to them because we were offended. And I'll tell you, that's just what's going on in this country. Is when you speak out or when you're offended, when they continue to shove this crap down the throat of the American citizen. If you are offended, they are offended. And just let me say that Scott Vallely and Aaron Vaughn volunteered to go and serve this country, and fight for this country after 9/11. They volunteered when they knew that they were going to be called upon to fight for our republic, and that their lives would be in danger. And countless other men and women have done the same since 9/11. And this is the courtesy that the American government, and I say reluctantly, but it's true, that the high-ranking people in the American military show our warriors. And then when the parents, and this is how they turn it on you, then when you've lost your son or your daughter, and you have entrusted them with thinking that they will do what is decent for your child, and that's who they are to us. That's who they'll always be. They'll always be our boys. They'll always be our girls to the parents. You've entrusted them with that, then they betray you like this, and if it bothers you, then they're offended that you're offended. That's where we are in this nation. And I just got to say, Karen and I have realized what kind of danger our military is in of being demoralized and beaten down, just like all other segments and institutions in our country. And if we lose our military, we've lost the republic. The other things don't make any difference, Donna.
Well, that's the whole grand design, but that's another story. You have to judge this president by his actions, and he makes no bones about it. He bows to the Islamic extremist heads of state that he meets with. He goes around the world apologizing for America. He's an anti-colonialist. But again, that's another story, and I don't want to get off track here. What I do want to ask the Major General, how far up does this go? I mean, are we so politicized even into the highest aspects of our military?
I think General McInerney outlined it as best as anybody about a month ago. And General McInerney, who you see on Fox News all the time, former Vice Chief of Staff of the Air Force, he said the first time in the history, and General McInerney and I go back to West Point. He graduated 2 years ahead of me in class of 1959. I graduated in 1961. But he said for the first time in his life and in his government service, to see a broad swath from the White House to the CIA to the State Department to the Defense Department, the IRS, totally corrupt, deceitful, and it's just not little pockets. It's the entire hierarchy of the people that we've put in political office, political appointees, and to a great extent now even the generals and admirals who have succumbed to this. And it's like a cancer. The question is, when are the American people going to get awake? When are they going to stand up and say, we're not going to take this anymore, enough is enough? We're getting to the point where we have to do it, because to suffer the pain and consequences of this inadequate, inept leadership in this country to destroy this republic, to me, is treasonous. And we let them get away really with murder, and we don't hold them accountable, and we don't send them to prison for the serious misjudgments they've made.
We mentioned CIA Director Leon Panetta, who got all kinds of special treatment until he retired. Tell us about the new CIA Director there, Major General.
Brennan, as far as we know, he is a Muslim. He is following the agenda of the Obama administration. We know the CIA has been gutted and transformed over the last 3 decades. The CIA, as far as we know from the people I talk to, is totally corrupted. They bow each day to the State Department, and the Obama administration at the White House has allowed this to happen. We have a totally inept Director of National Intelligence, General Clapper. I am afraid to say is a totally inept, innocuous, and uninformed, illiterate when it comes to radical Islam. So when you have this in office, and you have a Chuck Hagel comes in who's totally incompetent and not prepared for this office, you have a president that's an amateur, totally incompetent. We have a country that is falling like Rome fell. So if the American people don't stand up, take charge, and demand that this government be changed as soon as possible, then we're not doing our jobs as patriots of this country.
Just the fact that you mentioned Brennan, who I know last time we spoke, you had told me that he was a Muslim. He spent a lot of time in the Middle East and he converted. To me, the fox is watching the hen house. This makes absolutely no sense unless you are a Muslim extremist sympathizer yourself. And this president, if anybody's even seen the movie 2016, makes no bones about it.
By the way, I was with the director and producer of 2016 today, Jerry Mullen. He's my neighbor here in Big Fork, Montana. And he was walking his dog, and I was taking Charles Woods and his wife around to look at Big Fork, Montana, and we ran into Jerry Mullen. And Jerry's now producing with Dinesh Souza the second documentary, which will be out next month, called America. And that's based on if Christopher Columbus had not founded America, what would America be like today? And he takes us through that whole documentary of historic events. So it was sort of interesting that we ran into Jerry today with Charles Woods and Charlene.
Wow, that's great. And it's funny because I know when we did speak last time, I mentioned 2016, not even knowing that you knew Jerry Mullen, but that's very cool, and we'll have to discuss that further. I do want to get back to...
Hold on, I need to interject something because I'm getting a bunch of text messages, guys, from former military. And I'm seeing words like, this is appalling, I can't believe what I'm hearing, unbelievable. And those people that aren't texting me, that aren't former military or that are just listeners, have got to be doing what I'm doing, and that is my jaw's dropping, I'm sickened to my stomach, and I'm going, what the hell can we do? What can we do? And, General, this is huge stuff, and it's a huge undertaking, and I know you've got some really fantastic ideas and things that you're going to want to implement that we'll talk later about. But what the heck can people do? Because this is sickening, what I'm hearing. Sickening.
They got to wake up, Don, and they've got to get away from just living in their own bubbles and realize what's happening to America, and that we're not conspiracy theorists. All you have to do is look at the facts. All you have to do is travel overseas and see how disrespected we are everywhere in the world. And to me, I'm totally embarrassed by our government. I love the American people. I want to waken them up. I want them to understand that the future of the country is in our hands. When we're trying to rebrand politicians and the political parties, I really put it on what I call the 40-year-olds. This is 35 to 50-year-olds. You all in that population group have to take charge because you're the ones that really are going to run this country and are running the country now in the corporations, various positions in academia and government. So I'm going to put it on the shoulders of the 40-year-olds, really start taking charge. Us older people can only be mentors, but we have to stand up and we've got to change this situation. And I'm not sure the political dynamics today, when we see Congress is basically ineffective, we see a Supreme Court to me, that has been corrupted, and we see the executive branch. We may take lessons from the Egyptians, as somebody told me last week, as I mentioned, but somebody also mentioned we ought to hire Putin as a consultant for our international diplomacy. Now, that's how bad things are getting in this country. And, if we have a revolution in the country, I'm not sure what it will look like. But we're approaching something that we may have to have a revolutionary change in this country to set the sails right for the future.
I got a tough question for you, General. In the event of a revolution, and that did take place clearly in Egypt, I have been asked, and I've asked myself this a number of times, do you think the military would turn on the U.S. people?
Yeah, that's been asked me a number of times. My answer to that would be that the hierarchy of the government would not stand by the Constitution necessarily, but would stand by the political chain of command. We know the Marines and the Special Operations Forces for sure will stand by the American people. Whether the file and the ranks of all the services would stand by the Constitution and the people is a big question. But I think what's going on, our military is wakening up. They see these rules of engagement and the misuse, the misdiagnosis of the enemy, the lack of proper strategy and tactics to win and come back home is there. The troops know that. And I learned that at West Point. The troops always know. The leaders sometimes don't know.
To me, this administration is castrating the military just for that reason. And they've put in their own special forces with a Homeland Security and 5 hollow point bullets for every man, woman, and child in this country. It doesn't make you sleep tight many times anymore. In fact, for the first time, we were outside this weekend and a military helicopter flew overhead. And to the point, it was so low that one of my puppies went running to the house because it scared the crap out of him. And it's the first time I actually thought, I wonder if we're being watched. I wonder if, I'm serious.
I sent the video immediately to Scott Winchell and said, please analyze this for me.
Well, on this downer of a note here, Karen and Billy, what would you tell somebody who were the parents of a young man who might want to be a Navy SEAL?
I hate to say this. When Aaron, as I said, when Aaron became a SEAL, we were proud. We were concerned. We knew Aaron was a believer, but we were proud. Even after Aaron died, immediately after he died, I had 2 young men, not knowing each other, come to me and say they were inspired by my son and they wanted to be SEALs. And actually, one of those young men I prayed with at a church that we were visiting and everything. But I'll tell you what, Donna, I hate to say this. I cannot say with a clear conscience, and this breaks my heart to say this about our republic and about our military. I could not say with a clear conscience that I would say to a young man who wanted to become special ops, or to a young lady who wanted to serve in the military, that I would think that it would be in their best interest today, and it breaks my heart to say that to serve this country because of the hierarchy, the refusal to put our Constitution and the best interest of our warriors, as the utmost importance. And in fact, I'll tell you this: the general may disagree with me. I don't think he and I have ever had this conversation. But based on what I've learned, and based on what I know from men who are fighting and who have retired, I believe that we should bring every man and woman home tomorrow morning and defend the homeland until we can give our men and women rules of engagement that make it easier for them to live by than to die by. In Afghanistan, we have made, our government and our military, our hierarchy and our military have made an otherwise primitive enemy formidable to the best military that the world has ever seen, and that's criminal. And somebody needs to be held accountable. Somebody needs to be locked up. Somebody needs to be charged. Somebody needs to be drugged from some high-ranking positions, not in the military, but in Washington, D.C., need to be drugged out and replaced with people who are loyal to our republic and to our military.
Bless you for having the courage to say that. I agree with you.
I want to talk
Donna,
about...
Donna, oh, may I say something really quick just to add to that?
Of course.
You know, Billy and I have had to become, I wouldn't call us experts, but for a lack of a better word, we've had to become experts on something we never dreamed we'd have to know anything about. But one stat that we came up with on our own here in our little office in our house that just stunned me when I realized it, and what really stunned me is that the media was not aware of this, that our congressmen and women were not aware of this number, but Billy and I uncovered it, is that 71% of the deaths in Afghanistan have happened since the ROE change, since we went to this specific strategy in 2009, I believe. I'm not sure exactly what the inception date is, but since 2009, we've incurred 71% of the deaths in that country. So 8+ years only represented 29% of the deaths. And then if you look at the wounded in action numbers, those numbers are really staggering. In 8+ years in Afghanistan, under the former administration and before these rules of engagement became so restrictive, we had 2,638 service members wounded in action. I wish you'd just take a stab at what the number is in less than 4 years since these ROEs have restricted. I'm not going to waste your time, but that number is 15,030.
Holy cow.
ROE is rules of engagement, if anybody
Rules of engagement, correct.
So, and that's
you
up under the Obama administration since 2009, up 600%. And the reason for this helicopter crash, among other things, is the fact that these helicopters are, everything is being overused, and it's stressed out.
Well, including flight crews.
Exactly.
That's exactly. They are running ragged.
I'm going to read some stats real quick from some things you sent me. 2009, average of 54 objectives. 186 objectives in 2010 and 335 in July 11. Now, correct me if I'm not...
Don,
yes.
Yeah, Don, that is special operations per month.
Exactly.
That's special. Yeah, okay. All right.
But correct me if I'm wrong. They are increasing the objectives, cutting funding massively, and overtaxing soldiers and equipment. Am I correct?
Absolutely.
Helicopters are not made to fly. They rattle themselves to death.
Well, you spent 6,000 hours in one,
I have
right?
Thousands of hours in sightseeing basically over New York, telling people where traffic is. And one of my colleagues crashed because I feel I was not in the helicopter that day because I was very good at hearing any kind of oddity, and we would land, and sure enough, there'd be something wrong. She wasn't as good at that. I mean, I wasn't a pilot, but I have a lot of hours in helicopter. But then you factor in the stress of being under enemy fire, these huge antiquated helicopters, sand that gets blown up and thrown into the engine, that's basically like throwing a monkey wrench into the gears. You just can't operate under that situation. And what President Obama did, thinking he's going to be Mr. Military, is basically expand the amount of ROEs that we have up like some 600%. And this is what's happened. And of course, everybody keeps saying,
well, he expanded all these objectives.
It's Bush's fault. It's Bush's fault. When this has been, sure, it was Bush's fault we got in there, but the point is we're still there. We're still there, and it's getting worse. And we now have to be tied, you do it with two hands tied behind our back. Mr. X, who was in this packet of information, Karen and Billy, that you gave us, is a Navy SEAL that retired after one of his friends died due to the following ROEs. And let me just expand on this real quick. What happened here? He says, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. No, that was actually a Ranger.
Okay.
And he was an Army Ranger, and he actually was the one who told us that the ROE restricted them so much that if an Afghani popped up and shot you from behind a rock and ducked down behind the rock, when he popped back up, you were not allowed to engage him until you had verified that he had not laid his weapon down when he ducked behind that rock. And his friend died under that very same principle. When an Afghani shot at them, engaged his team, the Afghani ran into the household, and the friend could not go in there and engage him until he had verified that he had not laid his weapon down, and he lost his life. And that's when this man said, you know what, I have a wife and children at home, and I cannot do this any longer. And he gave up a lifelong career, gave up his retirement, all of his pension, everything, because he realized that he needed to live more than he needed that job. And this is what these guys are facing right now. And I got to tell you something. People need to know that Billy and I were almost left with no recourse but to write this book, because the mainstream media has been deadly silent on this issue. They are not talking about the green on blue murders. You know, we're not seeing the body bags coming home like we did while Bush was in office. And you know what? This is as apolitical. This is as apolitical as it gets. Men and women are dying, and no one's talking about it. And you know what? This is an American problem. It's not. It is not a right or left issue. This is an American issue, and Billy and I were left with no choice but to expose this. And thank God for brave, fearless, courageous men like General Paul Vallely, who came along beside Billy and wrote this book. And he is helping us get this truth out. He is using his good name and his character and the unspeakably proud reputation he's built as a major general in our proud U.S. military, and we're thankful to God for men like him. But this book had to be written. People must know what's going on.
Well, again, the website for the book, www.specialopsbetrayed.com. And the book, Betrayed, Exposing the High Cost of the War on Terror. You can order it. You can pre-order it at a discounted rate. You're not going to be able to do that long. I'm assuming about another month, right?
The end of July, it goes to regular sale price.
Oh,
yes,
you got less than a month.
Order early, order often.
That's right. Hey, question for the three of you guys. The other night when we were talking, Billy and Karen, you guys elaborated to the point of it being fascinating to listen to because of your detail of exactly what happened that night regarding this ambush and why it became an ambush, how it became an ambush. Do you mind going over that again? Because I'm telling you, you laid it out like I would expect the general to do.
Billy, do you want to take that, or do you want me to?
Go ahead, Karen.
Okay. What happened is we had located a very high-value Taliban target, Karita here in the Tangi River Valley. So we sent in a team of 47 Rangers and some Afghani commandos into the south end of the valley. They landed about 2 clicks away from this village where Karita here was believed to be. And as they were approaching the village, this is very important, they hadn't even gotten there yet, 2 men left the east rear side of that village and started heading north up that valley. At the same time, 8 heavily armed men left the west side of that village and headed north up the valley. These men we engaged with our Apache choppers overhead because we could see that they were carrying RPGs, heavy weapons, and we engaged them. We believe we killed 6 of them before 2 escaped into the woods on the west side of this valley. Now we watched the 2 men that went out the east side, the rear east quarter, and headed north. We watched them for quite a while, and they began tactically moving from house to house. Now remember, this is at 2 to 2:30 a.m., the middle of the night. They began moving tactically from house to house, gaining forces, and we decided to inject the immediate reactionary force, which was the SEALs sitting back at the forward operating base. We decided to send them in when that group on the east side had accumulated to 8 or 9 men. We had the 2 men that we still knew were over here on the west side of the landing zone, And then something we weren't told in the debriefing, and these are the kind of facts you're going to find out in the book. You're going to hear military testimony in this book, straightforward. This is what they didn't tell us in the debriefing, but we read later on when we started looking through the documents, is there had also been a collection of 20-plus military-age men in the rear of the landing zone. So they had set up a triangle around where this chopper would come in. And if that's not an ambush, I don't know what is.
Unbelievable.
And we don't believe that they thought they could shoot the chopper down. We believe that their intention was to attack the men once they were on the ground, which I can tell you, we might have lost somebody, but we wouldn't have lost 30 Americans if we had been able to get a chopper that got us to the landing zone and got us on the ground.
The bottom line is, this is the Taliban and Al-Qaeda. We're supposed to be fighting them, and here we are appeasing them. Just a little over 10 years after 9/11. It just
we are giving them our flight route.
Oh, I know. I mean, why don't we just... I feel like we're the British, during the Revolutionary War, trying to be very prim and proper, marching right down the middle of the road while the settlers jump out from behind the rock wall, shooting and just picking them off. That was... I mean, this is what we've become. We're so soft, and it's just, again, I don't know how many times I've said it, but the fish rots from the head down, and this just, I can't imagine the outrage you're going through. I'm outraged talking about it, let alone having to lose a son so needlessly.
Let me tell you something, Donna.
Mm-hmm.
I have shaken the fish's hand, okay? When our son died, we were allowed, or we were forced, or we shook the fish's hand, and yes, it rots from the head down. And I've looked into those eyes that look past you, and I've shaken that cold, limp hand of a man who I don't know.
He loathes the military. I'll say it.
Okay.
He loathes the military.
Yes.
There's no doubt about it. And anybody who has any half a brain in their backside that knows human nature, it can tell body language, sees that. And the left does that. The left has to loathe the military because that's what stands in the way of them getting their way and taking total control of everybody. It's just part of the plan. And that's, it's got to be stopped. And if the mainstream media would do its job, we wouldn't have this problem. But as you know, it's quite the opposite. They're in the hands of this government. And in fact, last week, the president actually met with some of the mainstream media who sympathize with the left, as if they're, conspiring here.
It's like a frat house.
They're like another arm of the government.
Don, I just wanted to interrupt. I've got to bow out here, but I want to show my appreciation to Karen and Billy for having the courage to step forward as a family. We will reveal the truth. We're excited about the book and the opportunities to do more television and radio and expose it to the American people. I want to thank you and Don, though, for having us on tonight and going through a very extensive interview on the details of what happened that day and that night in Afghanistan on Extortion 17. So I'm going to bow out now, but I'll be happy to come back on and talk about this. And Karen and Billy, we're looking forward to having this book come out in August, and I think it'll be a successful in the light of exposing what happened, why it happened. But even at the end of the book, we're going to have questions, and we want those questions answered by our government.
Yes.
Yes, we do.
Well, General, we greatly appreciate your time tonight, sir, your expertise and your support. And I hope that you have a great evening. Billy and Karen, I hope that you'll stay with us because I'm not done with my questions.
Thanks, Phil.
I know it's getting late. It's getting past everybody's bedtime. General, thank you so much. We certainly will talk in the future. That's Major General Paul Vallely, StandUpAmericaUS.org, and the Scott Vallely Soldiers Memorial Fund. Again, we're speaking with Billy Vaughn and Karen Vaughn, who, along with Major General Vallely, wrote the book Betrayed, Exposing the High Cost of the War on Terror. And you can get it right now early. It's out in August, but get it early, and you can get it a little cheaper, too. SpecialOpsBetrayed.com is the website. SpecialOps, O-P-S, Betrayed.com. And also check out other websites for Karen and Billy, forourson.us. That's FOROURSON, forourson.us. And Operation300.com, which Karen said helps some of the fallen soldiers' children go to camps and things of that nature. That's just an awesome situation. God, we should do that's another show in and of itself, really.
Well, first of all, before we continue, and I want to make sure you're both cool with continuing, because we're going over time. And hold on, I'm having my engineer point at me for something. Everything okay? All right. Cousin Dave.
Cousin Dave, it's past his bedtime.
At any rate, the other night when we talked, we said there's no rules, there's no time limit. So if you're willing to continue, I would very much like to. If you don't, I totally understand.
At least for like another 15 minutes, okay? Is that cool?
Sure, absolutely.
All right, here goes the one I've been waiting for all night. I got my bottle of Tums out, and I've taken 3 of them because this is nauseating. I want you to describe when the Admiral came to your house.
I'll start if it's okay, Karen.
Sure.
When the Admiral came to our house, he and I had met previously in November for a short discussion or encounter, and we'd gotten a little crossways. So the first thing that he did when he came to our house was apologize. He was a gentleman. He came in and apologized, first of all, for not recognizing who I was when we met previously, because he told me when I introduced myself, "Oh, yeah, I know who you are." And then later he stated, "If you're who you say you are and your son got killed." And I said, "I thought you said you remembered me," and he apologized for that. So when he came in, he apologized to Karen and I both. And he and the man that he brought with him said they wanted to answer any questions that we might have about Aaron's death. And we sat at the table, and he quickly stated that this was not political, and we all agreed. But all throughout the conversation that day, he continued to go back to President Barack Obama and how good a man he was and how good a president he was and how he wasn't responsible for Benghazi and how he didn't have anything to gain by the bin Laden raid, and to the point that, and how he was a good man, not just a good president. And I'm saying those things because this was not all said at once. If you can picture the conversation, we would talk a while and he would go back to something, to the point that finally I told him, "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to not mention that man's name again in my house." And probably the most notable thing that happened all day long was early on in the conversation. He had told us that I just want you to know that the military will never hold anything back from the families. And Karen was asked a very simple question. I mean, just kind of nonchalantly said, "Well, what about Pat Tillman?" And if anybody out there in your listening audience knows the Pat Tillman incident, the situation, you know what I'm talking about. The Admiral immediately raised up in his chair, and his face became red, and he slammed his elbow down on the table and said, leaned toward Karen and said, screamed, "What about Pat Tillman?" It was just a simple case of friendly fire, which is absolutely the truth. The problem with that is that the military lied about it for over a year, that it was something else. And the irony of the way he answered that, everybody sat there in silence after he answered it that way, because there was no comeback. We knew that he had answered both parts of the question. Yes, it was. And we know you lied about it. So it kind of set the tone for the rest of the day. answered a lot of questions with things that we knew were, and I'll just be polite by saying this, they were not correct. I could be a lot stronger about saying that, but they were absolutely not correct, because we had the 1,250 or so pages of testimony that answered things contrary to the way he had stated it, and it became quite embarrassing. But as the day went on, it was just a very, very heavy, oppressive meeting. And I'll let Karen say, I don't want to take up all the time. Karen, you say what you want to, hon.
Well, I'll be a little stronger than Billy.
Why did I know that?
I'm a mom who's been killed, and I'm not playing nice anymore. I'm tired of this. I think until some Americans start taking these fights seriously and speaking the truth, regardless of if it's going to wound somebody's ego, we're not going to get very far. And that's what Billy and I are trying to do right now, is just buck up and say it. But the truth is he lied to us over and over and over again. And the only reason that we knew that is because Billy and I had studied this 1,250-page document that we'd been given, which was the military testimony about our crash. And one incident after another, he would say something that was ridiculous, and it honestly got to be embarrassing for him, because I don't know if he just was. I don't know. I'm saying that he came across to me as a confident, somewhat arrogant man, and I'm sure in his position that's an easy role to assume. But I'm not sure if it was arrogance or if it was just a gross miscalculation that he thought he was talking to people who had not done their research clearly. Because the very first thing that started the discussion between, or the obstacle between he and Billy at the SEAL Museum was, Billy said, "Sir, why were they not able to get any pre-assault fire that night?" Just if there's anybody out there listening to this, lots of times I found out people don't know exactly what that means. That just is cover me fire. You see it in every movie you've ever watched, right? Cover me. I'm about to make a difficult move here. Throw down some fire so the people duck their heads and they don't shoot at me. So he said, "Sir, why were they denied pre-assault fire?" And he screamed at Billy, raised his voice, and said they can get pre-assault fire anytime they want it. And Billy said, "Well, sir, according to sworn testimony," and this is just how conversation went over and over. "Sir, according to sworn testimony, they say there's a 1 in a million chance of getting pre-assault fire." And so instead of addressing that question, it was almost like dealing with a teenager or something. He just changed the subject, and he said, "Well, what do you want us to do? Shoot up an entire valley?" And you know what? I would say,
village.
Right. I would say as an American...
Village. Yeah.
A village, yeah.
What a carpet bomb the place. Oh, but I didn't say that.
Well, and the point is, there's lots of points that can be made from this, and I could take up a lot of time telling it. But Billy, the point was, and he told the Admiral this that day. He said, "Sir, the fight was going on in the valley. The homes were on the ridge. There were no civilians to hurt by laying down that pre-assault fire. The only people down there in that valley that night were people we were fighting."
But these locals still hide behind people, and
of course
women
they do.
and children.
Of course they do. But that's how I feel. I mean, I'll just say this boldly, and I'm not ashamed to say this. If Americans had let terrorists come in and overtake our nation, I realize this is a complicated war. I know it's not easy. I know people have hard decisions to make. But look, I'm an American. I have children and grandchildren. If we had let our nation be taken over by ruthless, violent thugs like Afghanistan has, and we're giving them aid and abetting them, then you know what? If Great Britain or some other country sent aid to my country to fight to liberate me, you know what? I would expect for the casualties to fall on our shoulders, wouldn't you? Because they've come to help us. I wouldn't expect them to die for me while they were doing, in other words, trade them for me. No, it would be me first, because it's my country they're fighting for. I would honor what they were doing for me. You would think some of that would be going on, wouldn't you?
Well,
but no.
You would if you're talking about a civilization. You've got an extremely uncivilized, barbaric nation. Just talk to the Russians. You know, the Russians
right.
couldn't
I'm
do
just
it.
Saying
they don't
you're,
want
you're absolutely
us there.
right.
They don't want to be
healing.
civilized.
You're right. I'm just saying, if it was America, yes,
Absolutely,
I would expect my houses to be shot up so the Britons could land and protect us. I would.
But see, that's why something like World War II was able to be accomplished. You had some semblance of, I guess, Western culture there. And there was some semblance of civility, for lack of better way.
Yes.
If there could be civility when it comes to a war anywhere. Obviously, if you're dropping a bomb on someone, that's not the case. But in general, the rules of engagement were such that all the countries involved sort of had some sort of rule of engagement that they followed. When you're talking about guerrilla warfare and people who change their allegiance,
they don't live by rule of engagement.
Well, no, that's the whole point.
That's right. That's exactly
right.
We're the only
no
ones living
war
by
is
any
good,
rule.
but this is a no-win scenario.
Let me go back to what you asked about Admiral McCraven's visit. When he left that day, I can tell you, you asked the question a long time ago. How far up does this go? I don't think it's about how far up this goes. It says, as Donna has said more than once tonight, the fish rots from the head down. It's how far from the top does this go down. This is not in the hearts and the minds of our warriors. It's not going up. It's coming down. And we realized that day when Admiral McCraven came, many of our friends knew that a man of his stature was coming to our home and our family, and they had told Karen and I, when he comes, call us, let us know how the visit goes. Honestly, we had hoped that we would get some word that somebody this high in the military was aware of what was going on and things had to be changed. Mm-hmm. And they shared some of our concerns. So many people had said, call us when they leave. It was on a Friday afternoon. I don't think we've told this publicly to anybody else, but we didn't make a call that Friday. We didn't make a call that Saturday. We didn't make a call that Sunday, and as best I can remember, we didn't take a call until Monday. Because the weight of that meeting and realizing that this high up, and he told us, he made it clear when he was here. This is one reason why we're not deceiving him. We're not talking bad about him or anything else when we share what he shared with us. He was comfortable in sharing. And not only that, in expressing the names of other generals and admirals in his position who were friends of his, and they're all good guys, and we're good with this. And when we realized that, it was so oppressive and so heavy that we sat all weekend long in our house, basically without saying much to each other, but trying to decide, do we give up here and turn our heads because this is so big, it's so embedded into our government and our military, or do we go on and try to get the truth out and try to find out all the truth? And by Monday, we had made a decision that was not easy to make. This is not a road that we'd like to be traveling down. I can tell you that. But that meeting was a big. It was a big deal. It was a big. I'm not going to say turning point because we were already
eye-opening.
It was.
For sure.
Absolutely. It absolutely was. And for the first time, we really began to see, Karen and I, being the novices that we were, really began to see how serious this is with our military. Because this is a man that is perceived. He's over the Bin Laden raid. He's famous. He is So, but let me touch on one thing, Don, that you didn't ask tonight. You do realize, I think you do. I think you have this information, but there were 7 Afghans on that chopper that night. who were not the same men who were listed on the manifest. Did you know that?
I hadn't gotten to it.
Okay.
Oh, it's on my list.
Yeah,
okay.
and that's odd because then it was switched at the last minute, so they really don't know who those Afghans were. They could very well have been suicide bombers.
I'm even going to try to go into, out of all the documentation that you guys have sent me on this, there's only 3 things that you speculate on, and I'm gonna want to go into those too. But let's go there. Let's go about these original Afghans that just kind of vanished and were replaced by scrubs.
And didn't that happen in Benghazi too? There were Afghans in that consulate that suddenly disappeared moments before the raid began because they knew what was going on. These were switched out though in this case, correct?
They were switched out, and
they were switched from basically major leaguers down to high school ball players, right?
Now, Don, I can't answer that because we don't know to this day who made the switch. What we can tell you about that is that question was asked that day when the Admiral was here.
I wonder if the Admiral might have been the one that's sort of knowing what's going on. That might have been why he was so emphatic. That he wanted to turn us around.
Well, I'll tell you this. As best as I can remember, and Karen can correct me if I'm wrong. When that question was asked, I don't think he ever commented on it throughout that part of the conversation because we had seen that in testimony very early on. That the statement that I made earlier that the 7 men were not correct on the manifest. But Karen and I had talked about it among ourselves for a long time and had decided, ignorantly, obviously, that maybe this was standard, because the Taliban might torture their family or something like that if they found out who they were. So I just kind of asked that question that way that day. I said it must not have been a big deal. And we were immediately, the man who was here with Admiral McCraven said, Mr. Vaughn, that was a very big deal. Said that should never happen. And he said, in fact, when the crash happened, the families had to be re-notified that their loved one had not been on that crash because, the names weren't right. And he said, in fact, what happened was at the last minute, a commander decided that he wanted 7 different, he didn't want those Afghans on the op. And I didn't think to ask that day about that. And, but after they left, I thought, after it dawned on me, what commander? Was this a commander on the chopper with Aaron, or was it an Afghan commander? Was it another American commander? So a couple weeks later, it finally dawned on me. I called a contact that I have at SOCOM that was in on the investigation, and I asked him that question, and he said, Mr. Vaughn, that's very puzzling. He said, because we, meaning the investigating team, didn't know that happened. And so that made it even more puzzling. And so
yeah,
that's
but you knew it happened.
Well, we knew it happened because we read it, but we don't know who called for it. And he went ahead and said, I find it even more puzzling because the Afghans who were working with your son were being trained by your son and his team, and it is very doubtful that they would have wanted 7 different Afghans on the chopper with them than the guys that they've been working with. So that's really as far as we've gotten on that, but we do want answers on that.
And nobody's able to give you the name of the Afghani commander that may have done this last minute switch, right?
Not to this point.
He switched to the other side now. He switched his.
Well, we're not sure that it was an Afghani commander, but somebody else who was in the military responsible for the vetting of this said more than likely it was an Afghan commander that swapped them out. We don't know if that's true or not, but we sure would like. There could be a simple answer to this, Don. Could be very simple, but we don't have one right now. So,
just judging from the emphatic behavior, though, of your visitor there, that was way high up. What was he, an admiral? It sounds way too fishy to me. Billy and Karen, let me just give another plug to the book here. Our guests are Billy Vaughn and Karen Vaughn, and earlier we were speaking with Major General Paul Vallely. The name of the book is Betrayed, Exposing the High Cost of the War on Terror by Billy Vaughn and General Vallely. You can buy it right now. It's out in August, but get a pre-ordered book for on the website, specialopsbetrayed.com. specialopsbetrayed.com. And I hope you guys get this book, read it, and inform yourselves, because this is something that is opening up a whole can of worms, in my opinion, so soon after 9/11. It seems like we forget, and the general population is just not caring.
I want to read something to you guys because, clearly there's a lot of angles to this multifaceted situation that you guys have talked about and that's in the book. But the most important facet, to at least to the 5 or 6 of us right here that are holding this show, is Aaron. And I want to read something that somebody that's listening to this show has posted, because this pretty much puts it into perspective for me as best that it can. This gentleman said, "Just hearing about Aaron Vaughn's determination and courage brings tears of pride to my eyes." That's what this show's about.
Yeah. He was something, I'll tell you.
I just can't imagine what you guys go through. Even you're never going to get over this. It's just not something you get over. I wanted to talk a little bit about also, I hate to bring this up now, as we continue to talk about the downing of that helicopter, the fact that there was some shrapnel found in Aaron's body that was not part of the helicopter.
There are some suspicious things that, we just feel like if somebody could just give us an answer, they may be able to just put this whole thing to bed, the questions. But, we did receive a copy of Aaron's autopsy, and in it we did see that there were indeed 4 pieces of shrapnel that could not be identified, and those pieces of shrapnel were sent off for testing. And to be a little more specific, to make you understand why that's a problem, is because every other piece of metal, there were cook-off rounds that went off in the helicopter. They had a lot of ammunition in there, and the cook-off rounds did go off, and some of them were lodged in Aaron's body. But everything was identified except for 4 pieces of metal. Could be a simple explanation, and it might not be, because going back to the 7 Afghanis, these are the questions that plague a parent's mind, and I want to say this before I go any further. I can't bring Aaron back. None of this will bring him back. What this does for me to uncover these things is I pray that it will stop it from happening to somebody else, because light always is better. Truth is always better than darkness. We need to know what's going on to be able to battle it fairly and to let people go in with their eyes wide open. If they want to serve in the military, if they want to go to Afghanistan, they need to know what's going on over there. Americans need to know. But, one thing that we learned from a recently retired SEAL Team 6 member was that even a member of Aaron's team that was in Afghanistan had sent emails back to other people in their team stating that they were worried about things going wrong. Some statements that flew around were, we know one of these days a suicide bomber is going to step on one of those choppers with us. That was one of the things that went around. We had a lot of questions about the explosion at the chopper to begin with. We had a lot of questions about one of the most difficult things for me to absorb, especially as a mom, the day we got the unspeakable news that Aaron was on that chopper, was that 38 people died, that there were no survivors in a helicopter crash. That just couldn't register with me. You just hear of the crashes all the time. These choppers are built to withstand crashes. They have, I don't know how a chopper's built, but I've been told that they're specifically designed for survival, And this chopper was only about 100 feet in the air, And then when I read about the condition of my son's body, it doesn't make sense to me with what's described in the debriefing. I'm not saying that it's not true. I'm just saying there's too many questions, and there's just a lot of speculation, and you can string off into a lot of, you can get into that there were more sophisticated weapons that were used. Well, that opens a can of worms that really Americans don't want open, because that insinuates another country's involvement. So, there's things going on here that I can understand why they've possibly been withheld from us. But at this point, somebody just needs to explain it. In these certain situations, somebody needs to explain it, because we are determined to get to the bottom of what happened. And if it can be, in a lot of the things we've talked about tonight are ways that we're practicing in this war, military standards and practices we're using that are atrocious, and they have to be changed, and they have to have light shed on them. But some of these other things that might eliminate some of the conspiracy theories, I wish they'd just go ahead and address those, don't you?
Well, that's the whole problem. Watergate, it wasn't the crime, it was the cover-up. There's so many things with this administration I've lost count. And, I do this for a living. I can't even tell you how many conspiracies there have been. And why not just come clean? The speculation is obviously there's something to hide. In this case, I feel there's an awful lot to hide. Same with Benghazi. The whole situation with the IRS and the NSA. And everybody says, well, the president is not involved. Well, this whole situation just proves the point. The president doesn't have to be involved. He's the president of the United States. Everybody knows his political agenda. Everybody knows his political leanings. So you have an admiral that comes in and visits you. He's obviously trying to get you to be persuaded into just kind of keeping your mouth shut, and does nothing but sing the praises of the president. And that's unfortunately normal, because people are trying to protect their collective backsides. But the order doesn't have to come from the president. Everybody just kind of knows what they have to do, and it's scary. If you look at an office environment, same thing. If your boss feels a certain way, the minions know what to do. They don't have to ask the boss.
Exactly.
And this is on a national level, what's happening, which makes things very scary, because so few want to do the right thing.
You put that so well, Donna. That's exactly right. We know what somebody wants from us when they're in power over us. We do. And we have too many spineless, weak-willed leaders in this country that won't stand up for this nation. They are bowing to their jobs and their positions and their pensions rather than defending this nation, which we are losing. It is slipping through our fingers.
Mm-hmm. Well, Billy Vaughn and Karen Vaughn, is there anything else you'd like to add in this? Is there anything we've missed?
We might have covered it all. We've got to, just add again.
Have you ever
Billy
done a 2-hour
in
interview on this?
No, we have not.
I told you there weren't going to be any time limits.
I think Billy's asleep. I'm not sure.
No, I'm just sitting here listening.
Well, we all know that the general has gone to bed.
The general said he had to go to bed.
One thing I do want to add that, and there's so much in the book. I just want to say we're not even talking about a tenth of the information that you're going to find out. That there's just not enough time in the day to talk about this on a radio show. But adding insult to injury, the Tangi River Valley, where those men died that night, had been cleared on 7 prior occasions. 7 times the U.S. with blood had gone in and cleaned out that valley. This was our 8th time in trying to clean out that valley. This was a dangerous zone. So that's what I'm saying. It just adds so much more insult to injury that we were operating the way we were, that we were operating with conventional choppers that couldn't get the job done. They couldn't get the job done in heated landing zones. They could definitely get the job done landing 2 clicks out from a heated battle zone and people walking in on foot. But the choppers were not equipped for this. And one thing that we want everybody to understand is the flight crew, they are heroes. They are American heroes. We don't have anything against the flight crew. They were in crappy, inadequate equipment, and it's not okay. No. And that's what we're outraged about.
It's wrong on so many levels. It really is.
That's
and you
correct.
just can't, like you say, you can't bring your son back. You can only hope and pray that a parent out there isn't going to let the same thing happen to their child. I don't understand how anybody could even want to join the military after this. I mean, there was such great pride in this country after 9/11, and it pulled everybody together. And instead of being the great uniter, which I hoped our first black president would be, it's been anything but. And if anything, just the great fomenter of Islamic extremism. And I've talked with some Muslim friends that we have, and they're outraged at it. A couple of them are Egyptian. They were saying, oh, we hope Morsi, is going to be ousted. This is, months ago. And they were so ecstatic that has happened and say, I wish the American people would wake up because this this is what's happening to your country if you don't. And yet we're the soft underbelly now. We're just kind of hanging out. We got to find out what's going on with Kim Kardashian, and everybody's fat and happy.
Or send hundreds of news teams to wait outside a hospital in England for when a baby might be delivered. It's just
exactly.
It's really sad while men die.
I have one final question or request for you. The folks that are listening to this show, if you were able to speak to, and you can speak directly to them, from a mother and a father that have endured unspeakable pain, what can you ask of the people that are listening to help right this wrong? What is something they can do?
I would say get informed and share the information you learn. As you learn it, share it. Because, one thing, Billy and I do a lot of speaking engagements right now, and one thing that Billy says most of the time when he speaks is one of my favorite things that he says is, it was not on September 11th, 2001. There were four attacks on our nation, and one of them was thwarted. But not one of them was thwarted by the American government or by America's military or any form of funded organization. It was thwarted by the people on Flight 93. Those people, those American citizens, stood up. They rose up. They did what they had to do, and we all believed that they saved our nation's capital. And that's what we believe. We still believe that there is power in the people getting outraged about something until they're at the point where they demand justice. And everywhere that we've gone, I have found that people love our troops. They do. They love our troops. I haven't found one person who said a negative thing about our troops. People care about them, but these troops are being betrayed by their leaders. And until Americans hear the truth, accept the truth, and start speaking their outrage about this truth, nothing is going to change. That's what Billy and I learned after our visit from Admiral McCraven. That's what was so disheartening about it. And this is what we want. We want people to listen, and we want them to share, and we want them to express the outrage, because that will finally make a difference.
And by doing so and getting information, all they have to do is buy the book, and they'll find out everything they need to know. SpecialOpsBetrayed.com. SpecialOpsBetrayed.com is where you can get the book. Billy Vaughn and Karen Vaughn and earlier Major General Paul Vallely, we do thank you so much for joining us. I mean, it just flies by when you can talk to people like yourselves. And you said it was an honor to talk to us. There's no way, Jose. It's an honor for us to talk to you, because you have given so much to this country, and we can only hope the country will eventually wake up and thank you back. That's all we can say. And hopefully by doing this, buying the book, and let me also mention your two other websites, forourson.us, that's FOROURSON.us, and Operation 300, the number 300.com. Check out those two websites as well, everybody. And also, we are a proud partnership here at Cowboy Logic Radio to be a part of StandUpAmericaUS.org. That's Major General Paul Vallely's organization. Please check that out as well. Lots of patriots, lots of folks trying to get involved and trying to be a little more active in saving our nation before it's too late. There's just no better way to say it. There really isn't. And Billy and
Thank
Karen,
you.
I want to mention as we leave, Don doesn't even know I'm doing this, so don't start the music yet, honey. Aaron Carson Vaughn, God, I don't even know if I can say this, killed August 6th, 2011. I just keep thinking of my own kids. I can't imagine what you're going through. Highly decorated with numerous awards, including Joint Service Achievement Medal with Valor, Navy and Marine Corps Achievement Medal with Valor, Combat Action Ribbon, Good Conduct Medal, Iraq Campaign Medal, Afghanistan Campaign Medal, Global War on Terrorism Service Medal, Global War on Terrorism Expeditionary Medal, and posthumously awarded the Purple Heart, Defense Meritorious Service Medal, hope I pronounced that right, and the Bronze Star Medal with Valor. Aaron Carson Vaughn, a true American, killed August 6, 2011, just after he turned 30 years old. And we do thank Billy and Karen Vaughn, his proud parents, for joining us tonight. And please, again, buy that book and read up on it and do your part to protect this country. SpecialOpsBetrayed.com. That's SpecialOpsBetrayed.com. Man, I'm sorry. I'm just losing it because I just can't imagine.
Now I can't talk, Don.
Okay. Billy and Karen, thank you again for joining us. I'm Donna Fiducia, along with Don Neuen. My pleasure, gang.
Guys, thank you so much.
Cowboy Logic.
Thank you so much. Have a good
.us. Okay, thanks, guys. And we're going to go out with the StandUpAmericaUS.org theme song. Have a good week, everybody. We'll see you.
All eyes are watching to see what you'll do. Who'll take the chance and make the first move? Will you shun the praise of the world in the moment of truth? The trumpets are sounding, the drums start to roll. The tempter is waging a war for your soul, and victory belongs to those who will fight to the end. So let's stand up and take each other's hand.
Logic Radio. Unfiltered, politically incorrect, common sense. You've been listening to Cowboy Logic Radio, a division of DONNA FIDUCIA Production.